Bon matin à tous. Bonjour. I hope you had a great coffee already. So, welcome back to this day 2 of our annual forum. We have a great agenda for you again today. So, let me share with you a slide. I see myself on the laptop here, which is very disturbing. So, before we start our day, I would like to start by expressing my sincere thanks and a few words about our advisory board at EMH. So EMH is composed of a consortium of university, but we also work closely with different stakeholders from across Canada. So some of them are here with us today. We have Alison Bailey, Pascal Lesage, Brad Little, Alistair McLean, Julia McNally, Kathleen Vaillancourt, and Jörg Wittenbrick. So sincere thanks for all your support across those years and for making EMH what it is today. So if you have a chance to meet them, please say thanks to them as well. We also have a bunch of other people that are not with us, but you can find their name on the website as well. I also want to acknowledge the members of our 3 thematic advisory committee that are basically helping us build some of those tools and engagement strategy across the last few years. So if you want to know more about those committees, we have an open source data committee, open platform committee, knowledge mobilization committee. So please make sure that you are also trying to connect with them as well during the days. Speaking of people that helps us move this ecosystem forward, we also launched an interesting initiative during Wednesday workshop at the MMCF, and I just want to share it with you so you are aware of that. So during the past few years, we were looking for a better way to recognize the people that are shaping Canada energy modeling ecosystem and modeling and policy ecosystem. So our field moves very quickly, it progresses, but its progress depends on individuals like you in this room that are bringing their thought and expertise into the network. So we decided to create what we call this Canadian Energy Modeling and Policy Making Hall of Fame. And every year we'll be awarding this recognition to somebody that are contributing to our ecosystem. So it's really a place to honor those who reinforce analytical rigor, connect modeling to policy, build capacity across institutions, and make collaboration possible across government and institution as well. So those people are often behind the scenes, but they help us move our field forward. So we're very excited by this new initiative. And basically, every year we'll be launching a call for nomination in September and August. So you can submit some of your colleagues or other stakeholders you think should have this award. And for this inaugural edition in 2025, we decided to honor a person that has been working for over 40 years in the federal government to support different transparency effort, modeling effort. He's grown Canada CG and IM and macro modeling capacity. Many of you know him very well. So I just want to give a big shout out to Nick Macaluso, who was our first inductee for 2025. We gave him a trophy Wednesday, and Nick is here with us today, so feel free also to tap him on the shoulder. So let's give him a round of applause again. And I'm hoping that next year there'll be a lot of competition for that prize, because it comes with a hockey jersey as well with your name on it. So hopefully you'll be fighting for this. So enough of me. We'll start right away with our next session, because again we have a busy agenda. So this session 5 is called Enhancing Provincial Resilience, Reliability and Regional Planning and Focus. It will look at how province are reinforcing reliability, managing regional interdependency, and planning for a more electrified futures. So this session is sponsored by ESMIA. I want to personally thank Kathleen Vaillancourt. She's on our advisory board. She's the founder of ESMIA and our president. Again, they have a booth there. Go in and visit them during the break and the lunch. They do an amazing job, so you should get to know them more, of course. And as a follow-up reminder, you still have time to vote for the poster. If you haven't visited the poster on the second floor, please do so during the break and lunch. And of course, you need to, you can vote on Slido. You see the code is there already. You can use Slido for your questions for the session we're going to be starting right away. So make sure that you engage like yesterday with your great questions. So I would like now to invite the 5 panelists to join our stage as I introduce our moderator, Pierre-Olivier Pinault. So please come on in while I'm talking about Professor Pinault. So Professor Pinault is one of Canada's leading experts in energy policy. He teaches in the Department of Decision Science at HEC Montréal. He has held the chair in energy sector management since 2013. His research focuses on electricity reforms and the link between energy system and sustainable development. He's an active contributor to the public debate and has authored numerous reports for government and public organizations. So please join me in welcoming Professor Pinault and the panelists to the stage.
So thanks, Edouard, for this very kind introduction. I won't be as kind with my panelists in the sense that I won't read all their bios, but I encourage you to read their bios on the website. So you'll basically be able to integrate more of, when I hear all these bios, usually it comes through one ear and then goes out. But we do have a very interesting session today on enhancing provincial resilience, reliability, and regional planning in focus. I think it's very well aligned with the discussions we had yesterday on the needs to integrate across provinces, have a more Canadian planning approach. And then, so we'll be digging further into these questions, the benefits of joint planning in terms of reliability, and that's, I think, very important. So I'll just briefly present our 5 panelists, and then we'll jump directly into their presentation, and we'll follow that with a set of questions. So we'll have Dave Richardson, Supervisor Planning Models at IESO from Ontario. We'll have Benoit Delcroix, researcher at the Research Center of Hydro-Québec. We'll have Elisaveta Kuznetsova, head of, and I like the title, head of Energy Value Chain Division. That's good, at ESMIA. In order, and so Elisaveta will share the time with Anirudh Sridhar, consultant at Elia Grid International, and then we're kind of going from, no, not exactly from east to west, but we'll finish with Western person from BC, Chris Gilmore, Assistant Deputy Minister, Electricity and Utilities Regulation at the Government of BC. So that's the menu for this morning, and please, Dave, if you want to come.
Perfect. So you
Great.
use a clicker.
Yeah.
So, but now you see, we're just going to switch this so you can see this.
Oh, perfect. Right. Thanks, everyone. So yeah, Dave Richardson, Supervisor of Planning Models. Our team is responsible for resource adequacy, energy, like production cost and capacity expansion in the resource planning group at IESO. And today I'm going to be presenting the results of our capacity expansion module, which was for the first time part of the annual planning outlook for 2025. So capacity expansion is a relatively new endeavor for us compared to energy adequacy and resource adequacy. This is the first time we've published it as part of the annual planning outlook. We've done some previous kind of spreadsheet-based stuff in 2016 and 2021. The first real test of our current setup was in the Pathways to Decarbonization study that came out in 2022. We learned a lot through that process, and over the last couple of years, we've been able to sharpen the model and get a bit better, but I'll go through at the end some of the things we're looking at improving moving forward. So just going to walk through the results, starting from the forecast to the adequacy outlook, how we do capacity expansion, what the results are, and what the resulting emissions and costs outlook is, and then some things we're looking to improve on in the future. So the 2025 forecast was a pretty hefty one, 75% growth in electricity demand by 2050. This compares to 60% from the 2024 APO. I think it's backtracked a bit coming for 2026 with the economic uncertainty, but either way, those are big numbers. So a lot of procurement and build needs to get done to meet that. And we're seeing more of a switch to being a really dual peaking system. We've historically been summer peaking with the air conditioning load, but when you see the heat pump uptake as well as electric vehicle charging, it really becomes a dual peaking system, which presents its own set of challenges, right? So we have to make sure that we've got enough supply for both, whereas historically we've just really had to focus on summer, and if we were good for summer, we were definitely okay in the winter. But as you see, by 2030 we're projecting it's like a less than 500 megawatt gap, which is basically rounding error in our model, so essentially dual peaking. In terms of the capacity adequacy outlook, so this is assuming all resources are around till the end of their contract with us. If they're rate regulated, they kind of tend to continue indefinitely, these hydro assets with OPG. It does assume some stuff that hasn't been built that was procured in the LT1 procurement, as well as we had kind of early insider knowledge on the Pickering refurbishment and Darlington SMRs, right? So those are baked into our base case. So the needs are manageable-ish, kind of out to the early 2030s. We do have procurement set up that are designed to fill that gap, but you can see post-2034, there's a pretty significant resource adequacy gap that needs to get filled. And that's largely driven by a lot of the gas contracts were signed in the mid-aughts. So they're coming off contract then, and we have to make some decision about what to do with those moving forward. So this is where capacity expansion comes in, and I want to be clear, the results of this should not be construed as an integrated resource plan for Ontario. We are very aware of the limitations of this modeling process, especially using one deterministic scenario. If this forecast comes to be, if all those costs are actually right, if we can actually buy the stuff and build it, this is what it looks like. Probably not going to happen that way. But I think it's useful as an illustrative scenario of the scale of build that would be required and the types of mix that the model's selecting to kind of manage the operability of the system. So the inputs include our existing and committed resources. As I discussed, we have our demand forecast that goes out hourly till 2050. Fuel, like the natural gas cost, we assume the carbon cost goes up and stays in place for the forecast. We didn't include CER in this. At the time, we did do a with and without CER analysis when we did this analysis last year, but our forecasts tend to really only include kind of certain policies and not try to anticipate policies, because that's a bit of a fool's errand we've found. So this one doesn't include CER. Honestly, the results between the two are fairly close in the long run. The only difference is a slight increase in emissions in the near term. We use a minimum annual planning reserve margin to kind of guide it towards adequacy. And then a bunch of candidate resources, capital and O&M costs, build limits, lead times, performance data, largely sourced from NREL, as I think most in the industry use. And then we have a bit of our own kind of inside information on some nuclear costs and lead times, right? So we're not allowing new incremental nuclear beyond the SMRs and the Pickering refurbishment until the early 2040s through discussions with Bruce OPG and our contract management team. It looks like it's probably going to take 16 to 18 years if everything goes right? In our capacity adequacy assessments, we do also include some probabilistic reserve to account for refurbishment delays and the risk of in-service delays for new resources. For this version, it was modeled regionally, so one big copper plate, and so where the resources get placed in the province isn't really considered. We used a 5-year step size. For this, a partial duration curve chronology. This is using Plexos. I think that was on a slide, but I'm not sure. But yeah, using the Plexos LT settings. We've done some analysis since then. Fitted duration seems to work slightly better, but runs a little slower. Surprisingly, using the sampled chronology, I think probably just due to the limited scope of our server, it's not sampling enough to improve the results, so we're sticking with duration curves. And so throw that all into the mix, press play, and this is what you end up with. And it's a lot of stuff, right? It's 40,000 megawatts of new build or reacquired resources by 2050. And due to kind of how we structured the build limits, you see kind of a staggered approach, right? So in the early days, we're kind of locked into what we have, and all we can get is new demand response. And then starting in the late 2020s, you can start to get new wind, new solar, new battery, and some new gas. And that ramps up pretty quickly, as you see. The model sees that shortfall coming in the mid-2030s, and so it's building in advance of that, because it can't, due to the build limits, build it all in one go. So it kind of builds up to meet that late 2030s gap, and then it kind of pauses for a while, and it waits for nuclear to come in and save the rest of the gap. And so we do see a fair bit of new nuclear building out through the 2040s. And we limited, I think, to about essentially one new unit per year on the nuclear side. And so this is presented as new resources. We recognize that we have all this stuff coming off contract that could also be either recommitted for another 5 years. We've also started to think about what repowering looks like. But from a model perspective, the model is so big already with all the inputs to try and guess at all the different options of what a repowered facility versus a recontracted facility and do it on a site-by-site basis and what they would cost is just adding complexity to the modeling process and over precision to what we even know about that process at this stage. So we chose not to allow the model at this point to do that recontracting or repowering, and acknowledge that our procurement processes will be able to sort out new build versus repowering versus recontracting as the most economic and viable option. So in terms of the emissions outlook, it largely follows the path of nuclear. So right now we've got a lot of nuclear units on refurbishment or plan to be refurbished over the next decade still, and that does increase our reliance on natural gas, and we're pretty locked into that. As I said, we can't really do much in terms of new procurements in the immediate future, and so we do see under this forecast emissions rising. They start to drop off as those new nuclear units come into service in the early 2030s. And then as the model, and this is kind of a modeling quirk, right? Because we didn't allow new nuclear until 2040, it builds up to, and then it waits, and then as demand keeps rising, those emissions rise until nuclear enters the picture again, and then they drop off to pretty close to nothing by the end of the planning period. And what does this look like from a cost perspective? Well, it's a lot of money, but surprisingly, the real cost on a unit basis is relatively stable. It actually decreases in the near run as you are bringing on more low-cost wind and solar, and then rises as you have to start to pay off the capital cost of the new nuclear. So the overall system cost, it's on a different slide that I didn't include in here for time. It's quite big, but the unit cost, just due to the huge volume in rising demand, it's spread over quite a large number of terawatt hours now, and stays fairly stable. So what are we looking to do? This is the funny thing about this whole process for us is we finished this analysis like November of last year, right? And are just wrapping up our 2026 analysis. So when I developed these slides, it was, what are we going to do for 2026? Well, now I can tell you what we've done. I just can't show you the results. So we have co-optimized the build-out of generation and transmission now. So we can say, this interface needs to be expanded by this much, and this is roughly where these resources should go. Still need to vet it with our transmission planning counterparts to see if it's in any way reasonable, but hopefully we will pass that test and be able to publish kind of zonally where we think resources should be situated. We made a bit of progress on marginal ELCC. So we did a bunch of ELCC runs on the 2025 capacity expansion results to kind of get a better input value for what we would use in 2026. Unfortunately, we didn't update to the right Plexos model to allow that feature, so we had to just use the better values as opposed to the curves. But next year we plan on upgrading again, and it will allow us to do some ELCC curves along with seasonal reserve requirements. So we can recognize the fact that, wind does this in the summer, this in the winter, and we have different reserve requirements for both. So that'll give us a better sense of meeting that dual peak requirement. One major area of work, and it was reflected a bit in the NRCan study yesterday, is really digging into build limits, because build limits and what you can actually practically build really have a large impact on your results in terms of the staging of things and how it chooses to build out. So I could probably spend 2 hours talking about what we did, but essentially we got a consultant we tried to get them to just give us annual build limits and walk away and put them in the model, but what they gave us was a spreadsheet of like 660 inputs of, land use, labor, global trade, global growth, and said, here, figure it out. And so we spent a good chunk of the year trying to figure it out. So we've basically developed an iterative process where we let Plexos say what it would like to build. We put that kind of labor allocation into the build limits model, let it say, okay, this is what you can build, given that desired, and then we iterate back until we land on something where Plexos is happy and the build limits are being satisfied. But it involved a lot of hair pulling. And then the other thing we're looking at, it's probably more of a long-term play, but we've started to do some work with EPRI on stochastic or probabilistic capacity expansion, understanding that one scenario probably isn't sufficient. For this year, we do have to do 3 scenarios. So the government requested that we do a low and a high demand growth scenario as well, so those will be included. But tying those together and figuring out what those results are isn't yet part of that work. Just rounding up, I think, as I said, this is a scenario, but I think it's really useful in giving a sense of what needs to be built, what the impact of different decisions are on costs and emissions, and what we need to go out and buy to meet our resource adequacy needs.
Thank you very much, Dave. We'll keep questions for the end, so please, you can ask your question on Slido. The Slido number may appear at one point, but you'll find it. So please, Benoît Delcroix, if you can join us. We'll move to Quebec and to a much more applied level at the building level. So we're moving from the global level to the regional level.
Do you know how it works?
Please, bouton vert.
Bouton vert. Okay, great. Thank you. So, good morning, everyone. So, thank you for the introduction, Pierre-Olivier. As it was said, I was going to present some activities from Hydro-Québec that is way more at the lower level compared to what Dave presented earlier. We are going to focus really on the customer side, demand side part. So I'm Benoît Delcroix, so I'm part of the Hydro-Québec Research Center. We have two big campuses, so one located in Varennes that probably most of you knows. It's close to Montreal, and that's the big campus of the Research Center of Hydro-Québec. But there's a small one in Shawinigan that is related more to domain-side applications, behind-the-meters application, and that's where I'm based. So the small campus there in Shawinigan. So today I will speak about the modeling of our activities about modeling the building stock in Quebec with using a bottom-up approach. So we really focus on the load on the different device inside the residential sector. So we try to aggregate all the loads and then get to at the provincial level. Blue one, right? Not that one. Yeah. So we are going to go through a little bit of context, the objectives in the framework of this research, and then I will speak a little bit about what is building stock modeling, how does it work, what is the main tools that we used, and then I will speak about two different initiatives. First one, Archetype Quebec, where we try to develop kind of typical model for typical buildings, and then the second one, which is more diverse, SimPark. We name it SimPark, and it try to have more diversity in the models that are generated using our algorithms. So a little bit of context. So the first slide, I think everybody knows, and I think it's still a good thing to remind ourselves that we are not on the good track. We still miss our main target in terms of decreasing greenhouse gases emissions at all levels, globally, Canada, Quebec, everyone. I hope that someone will have the right strategies to decrease greenhouse gas emissions. We are not on the right track to limit or to get to our first target of 1.5. It's already dismissed. So let's focus on what we have to do to accelerate this decarbonization of economies. So in terms of Hydro-Québec, we connect this decarbonization challenge mainly with electrification. So that's why recently Hydro-Québec released a kind of action plan for 2035 and then 2050. It's based mainly on 5 different priorities. I will mainly focus on the priority number 2, but maybe I can emphasize a little bit priority number 3, which is increasing the capacity, the production of electricity. There is an objective to doubling the electricity production by 2050. And I think it will be like 60 terawatt hour more by 2035, which is quite big. So there will be a lot of investment in the coming years to increase the capacity in Quebec. But what I will focus on today is really priority number 2. So how to better consume the electricity by the different customers and the end users. So we set up like 2 targets. First one, the 21 terawatt hour in terms of energy efficiency to implement in the different sectors of our economy, industrial, commercial, and residential sector. And also a second target, which is more about managing the peak demand, so trying to decrease by different manner by 3.5 gigawatt the power peak demand during, well, it's a winter peaking region, so during the winter, of course. So doing so, it requires to define strategies. So that we can set up the best programs, the best standards, the best building codes, national energy code for building also, etc. So to do that, we set up a big modeling tools, and that's what I'm going to speak about today. So the topic is building stock modeling. What is it? So if we make it very simple, it's like a digital twin of our residential building stock. So we try to have a virtual representation of our buildings. And it is based on different components. The first one, we need to characterize our building stock, so to have a clear idea of what is in our building stock, and it's based on the large diversity of data coming from the energy use, from sub-measuring measurements, from surveys, from land registry, property assessment world, a lot of different data that we need to gather together so that we have a better idea of what it is our building stock. If we don't have, we use the codes, so the construction code, building code, or the NECB, so the National Energy Code for buildings. So based on that, a second dimension is, well, we try to model it. There is like two types of big approach, I would say. Top-down approach, where we try to have a global view of the building sector and we model that sector in that way. That's not the approach that we use. We try to go deep dive in the sector of the residential sector and aggregate everything at a higher level. So for that, we have two main approaches I will discuss today. It's archetype approach and then a more generative approach for that. And then you have a list of tools that we use that is commonly used in the building industry. Energy Plus, Open Studio, that's clearly the tools that we use commonly. And of course, we do all that for end applications. So the idea is really to identifying, assessing different energy flexibility and energy efficiency measures so that we can identify the best strategies to fulfill or to reach our goals in terms of energy efficiency and reducing the peak during winter periods. So the first initiative, Archetype Quebec, so it's a collaboration with multiple partners, with the Quebec Ministry of the Environment and also two universities that make actually the deep work on that, so Concordia Universities and Polytechnique Montreal. So the idea of that initiative is really to develop calibrated and validated models for the residential sector, for all sectors actually, but we mainly focus for now on the residential sectors. That's the main inspiration is the US prototypes building. So we try to kind of having our own models so that we can use it and it's more precise to have our own models. And the future research that can be done, it's mainly built on that and trying to have a better representation of our building stock using these archetypes. For now, where we are, we have more or less 48 residential models representing single-family houses, so detached, semi-detached, row house, that kind of residential buildings. We have also multi-unit residential buildings, MERBs, and also plexes, so duplex and triplex, which are very common in Montreal, for example. On the side of the commercial side, we have less work done in that side. So we have mainly 14 models that represents schools and offices for now. There is still work in progress so that we can validate these models, and but they are already public. So if you are interested, you can use them. It's on a repo, a GitHub repo, so you can use it. So the idea, of course, for future work is to expand this work so that we can represent the most typical buildings in Quebec with that. So the main problems with archetypes, it's the lack of diversity. So we have one building model that represents like the average building type, but we don't have all the variability inside that building type. So that's the target of the second initiative, SimParks, where the idea is really to generate on the fly building models based on attributes. So the idea is really we provide some attributes. We have a kind of machine that an algorithm that use these attributes to build building models. So that's quite interesting because we can, based on different attributes, generate a lot of different buildings that can represent all the diversity of models of buildings that we see in our building stock. So once again, the main inspiration is from US with the Reststock and Comstock initiatives. So we use the same tools, but we try to cubicize a little bit the input so that we can generate models that are of interest for us. If we go a little bit more in detail with this project, we have mainly a big part of the work, the monk work, that is to deep dive inside the data, trying to gathering every information that we can, so that we have a clear idea of the building stock. And based on all these data, we built a sampler. So it's an algorithm that allows us to generate a list of buildings that is representative of the building stock in Quebec. The sampler works based on a Bayesian network, so it's basically a statistic networks, so that we can generate representative sample of buildings. We can generate like 100 buildings or 1 million if we want. This Bayesian network can be constrained, so we can decide that the network should produce a list of buildings, for example, just for the island of Montreal, or we can ask for buildings in Quebec with EV vehicles, for example, for all of them. So we can generate really a park of buildings that can be very diverse or very specific if you prefer to be specific. So once we have that, so we have a list of buildings with all the attributes. We feed that in a second step, which is the large-scale modeling and simulation part, which is basically a parallel simulator. So each buildings is simulated in an independent way, and we can simulate plenty of them using OpenStudio and Energy Plus, and using the specific tool OpenStudio HPXML. So using the attributes, we can build a structure of data structure that is compatible with the tools that we use, so that we can generate the models and run it. When doing that, well, we get a very big data set, synthetic data set, and that could be used as a reference data set that can be used by multiple actors to evaluate measures, evaluate different scenarios for the future evolution of the building stock. I think there is also, it's public, that work. So once again, you can go to the GitHub repo and get the models, the sampler, and the simulator. There is not yet, we don't share for now the data set that are generated, because we don't yet validated the results. So we prefer to have something very solid before going public with that kind of data set. I will conclude with some brief takeaways. So the idea here is it was ready to present to you the different initiatives that we have in terms of representing the building stock, with two typical ones, so the Archetype Quebec initiative and SimPark, which is more an internal project of Hydro-Quebec. I listed here all the resources that are public that you can use. I know that some modeler in Quebec was very interested by the weather data that was provided by CIMEP. It was deprecated recently, so it's still available on a new GitHub repo, so you can get the weather data there if you are interested. And then, well, all the models that I presented to you today are available also publicly. I just remind you that also Hydro-Quebec has an open data portal. It's expanding slowly, but over time it gets bigger. So do not hesitate to use them also, because it's quite interesting too. For the SimPark simulator, we do tutorials. So if you are interested, we can set up a kind of tutor with some of you, so that you can learn how to use it. Thank you very much. So maybe the last disclaimer is important. It's still in development, so there is no warranties of quality for now. So that's important to know. Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Benoit. So for connecting Ontario and Quebec, we'll have Elisaveta and then Anirudh. So please join us.
Thank you. Thank you, Pierre-Olivier. Okay. Hello, everybody. We're very happy to be here. So today I will be presenting with my co-author from Elia Grid International. We will be talking about interconnections, their added value, and we'll try to connect with the yesterday presentation from NERC, a very interesting one, about some insights on reliability with interconnections and under failures. From the personal note, I was very happy to work on this. So this reminded me my doctoral studies, then I was working on reliability for power systems. And just also for the disclaimer, this study was designed specifically for EMH, so we didn't have so much time to do a cross-North American study on reliability and not maybe so much in details as Dave presented the capacity expansion for Ontario. So do not pay attention specifically to numbers, but more to the trends and to some insights we would like to give you. So I think you know ESMIA, but if you do not know, I will remind you. We are the modeling and consulting firm specialized in energy. We are mostly supporting decision makers at different levels for the optimal energy strategy and integrated energy system planning. Our core activities are structured around 3 pillars. So we're developing different technical-economic models. We use our proprietary models to advise our clients. And we also provide training and support for clients who want to build modeling capabilities and adopt models, so to integrate them into their decision-making process. And you can see some preview of the projects and reports we participated in. So we were involved in modeling for hydrogen strategy for Canada. This is an updated version. We have a long-term collaboration with the Institut Énergie Trottier for the Canadian Energy Outlook. And also for ECCC, worked on the evaluation of clean electricity regulation and the impact on different provinces. So for today's presentation, we were asking different questions, obviously starting by the more logic one, what will be the electricity capacity mix evolving under the increasing demand, how interprovincial trade patterns may change in the future, and going specifically into the adequacy assessment and some reliability issues. And this part will be presented by my co-author here, who will be also presenting the organization a little bit later. So to do so, we used 2 models. NATEM was used as a strategic planning, so we use it for the optimal capacity expansion under the increasing demand at minimum cost. That we feed it into the Plexus model used for the operational planning, so the optimal planning to ensure adequacy and to enhance reliability. And you can see the preview of some data flows flowing between different models. So, for example, from NATEM, we provided capacities for generators, transmission systems and interconnectors, load curve, and different policies in place in Canada. For the case study and scenarios, so as I said, unfortunately, we didn't have time to look into all Canada, so we selected 2 provinces, our favorite province, Ontario and Quebec. Very enjoying working on these 2. So the case study was these 2 interconnected and also exchanging some flows with the neighbor regions. For the capacity expansion planning, we were looking on a scenario that we actually took from the multimodal comparison, the one on the nuclear expansion. So I think it fits actually very well what Dave presented. For the capacity planning perspective, we will check the slide on expansion later. And we put also us in a business as usual case, so no carbon reduction constraint, but we still have different policies in place, such as clean fuel regulation, clean electricity regulation in place. So we're actually considering what's currently in place as a policy. So this is a small difference with what Dave just presented, I guess. Our planning horizon is from 2021 to 2050. And for the operation planning with Plexus, we selected 1 year just to test operational planning and what can be the results with and without generators failures, and also with and without interconnectors between Quebec and Ontario. So we started gradually, first looking on what will be the capacity expansion mix. So here you can see the preview for Ontario and Quebec. What you can see here is mostly the increase of the electricity capacity mix because of the increasing demand. And since we were also looking on this mix from the point of view of which year to select, so just to give you directly the preview, we took the one on 2035 because we wanted at the same time to have most of the changes in the electricity mix to be captured, but at the same time not to be too far in the planning horizon like in 2050, where it becomes too much hypothetical and a lot of things can change. So we wanted to be it more grounded, let's say, to the current state. So you can see on the slide some observations of how mix evolve. So we see that the total installed capacity will increase by about 30% between 2021 and 2035. We have the increasing intermittency inside our generation mix, which is mostly due to the onshore wind. So it's about 22% for both provinces of the total mix in 2035 again. And for the nuclear, we see, since we curated the scenario where the P&I was on expansion on nuclear, so we continue to rely on nuclear for Ontario. And SMRs are coming in a bit earlier than they presented. I think it was starting from 2040.
But that was incremental to the
Okay, right. Exactly, okay, perfect. So in 2035, you can see already the small modular reactors in Ontario to deploy it. Starting from looking then on the trade patterns and how they may shift in 2035 compared to what is currently is situation. We noticed that in general, Quebec remained to tend to stay a net exporter of electricity to Ontario. And what we also were interested is how it may shift the trade patterns during the year. And since the Ontario after 2030 tend to become more winter peaking province, but still keeping the summer peak as well, what was interesting is that it continued to import more electricity during the summer, and this is due to the various reasons, such as Quebec having more available electricity during the summer, and also Ontario tend to integrate more energy efficiency measures for example, refurbishment buildings, and also leveraging higher winter wind generation and expand district heating system that can utilize actually waste heat from the nuclear facilities. So this section starts here. I will pass to my co-presenter, who will talk more about reliability and adequacy, and I will try to conclude that.
Good morning, everyone, and very happy to be here, finally. I was supposed to be here yesterday, but ran into some logistical issues. Yeah, so let me introduce a bit about myself and my company, and then we get started into the adequacy part or reliability part. So my name is Anirudh, and I'm a consultant at Grid International. I come from Berlin, Germany. And what EGI does is we specialize in providing power system solutions and solving all sorts of problems in relation to system development, right from market modeling, market design, and also system security and so on. I probably missed a lot of things there, but you can check our website to see all of the things that we do. We are there we have offices in seven countries, but the main offices for us is located in Belgium and Germany, and this is also because our parent, we can call them our parent system operation companies are there. 50Hertz in Germany and Elia in Belgium. And yeah, I think that's enough about TGI. I will go to the more interesting part. Okay. So, system adequacy. So just to give you an idea about what it is, I'm pretty sure most of you already know it. It's just the ability of a power system to meet demand at all times. And here we account for all sorts of uncertainties that could happen with load, with renewables, with fuel availability, and also the generator availability. And especially in the context of Europe, the generator availability and the weather are the most important factors in doing this sort of analysis. So in Europe, we do this ERA studies, European Resource Adequacy Studies. So there, both the generator failures and weather is what we consider primarily. But there are other forms of failure like fuel availability, primarily, and other factors that could also be considered. But our focus is just mainly on generators and the weather. So how do we measure reliability? There are some metrics. Loss of load probability, likelihood that there's generation is not available to meet the demand, and loss of load expectation, likelihood that how many hours do we expect that the load is not met, and also the expected amount of energy that is not met. Generally, the trends that we see is, as the system evolves, there are more renewables coming in, and we see increasing adequacy risks now compared to what we have seen historically, and also the indicators also show this in general. So before we get into the part regarding the reliability indicators, we will just look at how the interconnectors benefit the system in general. So what we see here is the interconnectors will help in making your system cheaper, basically. But then what it also means is that this is more from how you model it, right? So when you consider two regions separately and you just model them separately, yeah, they have their own costs. But when you just put them together, when you introduce the interconnection as a whole, you make the system cheaper, but then the exporting region can bear more costs. And we also see that if you introduce generator failures, the cost increases. And moving on to the reliability indicators, we see that when you introduce interconnections into the system in general, becomes more reliable. But we do notice that if one of the regions could inherit sort of this reliability burden when you put two regions together. But this is more from like a purely modeling perspective, because if you see the system as a whole, it would have become more reliable. But that need not be necessarily the case when you look at separate regions that are there in your model. So that's why we see that in this case for Ontario, it's slightly the probability is increasing. But when we actually run the simulations, we don't really see any unserved energy. The unserved energy as a whole decreases. But again, this also depends on the number of samples you run. We didn't have too much time or the computation too much time to run too many samples. So this study, we just used like around 50 samples. But of course, more is always better. And I will hand it back to Elizaveta for the closing.
Thank you. Okay, just to confirm, and based on the yesterday presentations, that interconnectors add a clear value, so we can have systems at lower cost. You can get an access for regions with less renewable generation to more cleaner power from another region. Regions who exporting could reduce the curtailment using interconnectors to export this electricity to neighbors, and obviously improve in general adequacy and reliability, what just Anirudh showed you. However, for the sake of balance and just to add some important considerations here, what we noticed is that consumers in exporting provinces may also bear the higher costs as the additional generation is built maybe to support this export, potentially increasing the rates. So this is the consideration to take into account if we want to interconnect a lot of provinces, and some of them will become exporters. They will investing more in the generation. So this investment should be paid then. And also interesting effect of reliability, risks spill over across the border. So before connecting with your neighbor, it is important to ask a question how he's doing from the point of view of reliability. If he's doing not good, he will be definitely benefiting from this connection. But you, as like having the system with a stronger reliability, you will be bearing some burden of failures from this side. And I tried to listen very carefully yesterday from NERC, so I put some quotes. You can correct me on those. It was pointed out that Canadian system becomes extremely vulnerable to critical events, and this is true. However, we must look also on the fact that these vulnerable critical events may be distributed across the territory in not homogeneous ways. So some provinces may be exposed more than others, and this brings us back to the fact that before interconnection must be built, we need to see how the neighbor is doing from this point of view. Is he prepared to these critical events and their occurrence and magnitude increase or not? And also unexpected retirement without replacement is a potential issue. And here again, probably you would like to connect with a neighbor who had a clear, consistent, and realistic integrated long-term energy plan to be sure that the reliability will be not decreasing over time and impacting your own system. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll go to questions, but I can't resist the temptation to mention that if you want to know more on the gains between Quebec and Ontario of having a more integrated market, in 2012 I did with a colleague a study published in the Energy Journal looking at basically how much wealthier we would all be in Quebec and Ontario if we were merging the markets, basically echoing the kind of economic gains we've seen in the ESMIA paper. Chris, please come and let's have the BC perspective now.
Okay, good morning, everyone, and thanks for the white stuff outside coming from Victoria. I don't get to see that very often, so I appreciate the opportunity. And I'm thinking of folks back home. We had a big rain, atmospheric river again this past week, and it's actually shut down the highways to the lower mainland. And folks back in BC are dealing with lots right now, so thinking of them too. Okay, so I'm going to tie a few threads together, and I just want to say to the organizers too, this has been really interesting from the policy makers like myself and my group that do electricity policy in BC. The topics are on point and very informative and very topical given what's going on these days. So I'll give a bit of context for BC, maybe a bit of a different system than some others are used to as well. Of course, we hear a lot now about our clean energy and our clean electricity driving economic development in the province, and that's something that's big for our province right now as well. Come from a bit of a different starting point where 98% of our electricity is coming from clean renewable sources through our heritage dams and those types of things. So we're doing more to expand our system. You hear lots about the North Coast transmission line and project of national significance and those things. So lots happening there to make the system bigger and more integrated. We see demands too, and these are all getting updated as we go, but even in the short term, we're seeing big increases for demand. We're doing lots to respond to that with calls for power. We've had 2 in the last 3 years that are in progress now, and BC Hydro is looking at capacity projects, and we had an RFEOI for capacity projects to see what the next big things are in that realm as well. Integrated system natural gas still plays a big role in things in BC. We're seeing demand to help drive the overall economy from our energy system at large, and we want to make sure we're having those systems work together as best as they can, and that's kind of what my remarks focus on today. Again, just a bit of the backbone of our system. If folks aren't familiar, we're part of the Western Interconnect, so we are connected to Alberta, and there's lots of ties about interties, which I heard yesterday too, and we have an existing one that we're trying to get back to full capacity, and there's some work to think about the future as well. Interconnections to our natural gas system, and you can see this on the map too with the backbones. We're all dealing with extreme weather and drought and peak demands, and how to make sure we have flexible system and make sure it all works as we go through these challenges as well. The gas system does play an important role in meeting those winter peaks. We have a kind of dual peaking system as well with our peak in the winter, but seeing more and more in the summer as more air conditioning and those types of things come on. The example folks like to talk about is the cold snap from January 2024. It was a really extreme western coast cold snap where all our neighbors were being impacted as well. The natural gas system produced twice as much energy to keep things going and the heat going during those times, and it allowed BC Hydro not only to meet their needs, but also help our neighbors with some very needed exports to Alberta and also to Washington State and others at the same time. So a couple of years ago, we had a new energy plan produced. This was from our previous minister, same government, different minister. And leading into that, we wanted to get the utilities together to start thinking about things together. The BCUC, to their credit, prompted this in some of their decisions back in 2021. Fortis BC is kind of our major natural gas distributor. We have BC Hydro, major Crown Corporation, Province is its sole shareholder. And we have Pacific Northern Gas, PNG, that looks after the northern part, so smaller numbers of customers, but an important role to play in the north and colder climates. And we got them all in a room and said, okay, let's think about the future. And they haven't, to that point, done a lot of that type of thing together. Their planning teams are now talking on a regular basis. They're sharing assumptions. The goal is when we get to the integrated resource plans for both, that they're working from the same songbook, they're using the same assumptions. And up until that point, they weren't. They were similar, but not totally the same. And I guess also modeling in their IRP some of the government policies in the same way through our Clean BC plan and what we're doing as well. And I'll talk about that in a minute too. So folks joked, oh, this is going to be interesting. You're going to get them all in a room talking about each other. Are you wearing a hard hat or not? But it actually turned into be a really productive process. So resource planning and climate targets. And again, this was something that was talked about yesterday too, which was really interesting. And the very capable folks of Navius, I know there's some folks here, have done our climate modeling for a number of years in BC and do a great job in doing it. But when it comes to energy planning, climate planning and energy planning aren't the same thing. We have climate planning that's hardwired to meeting targets and driving policy intentions towards that. But we're in BC, we're very open on progress. We just produced our climate change accountability report a week ago again. We're not on target to meet our targets, like folks that I just saw a few minutes ago as well. But when you're planning an energy system, it has to be reality-based and to see the uptake of the programs rather than our future projected hopeful outcomes of those programs. So that was a big focus of the conversation and modeling where we're going. And we're making great progress in EVs and heat pumps adoptions and those types of things too. But how do we drive progress in that, but in a way that the energy system can respond to in a very practical based approach. I just don't want to forget too the technology side of things as well. We have a long-standing program in our ministry and in my group called the BC Clean Energy Fund. There's a levy on natural gas bills, just not natural gas bills, but combustible fuels of different sorts as well. That funds this program, and we're seeing it get into more and more innovative approaches when it comes to smart load management, smart electrical panels. They funded some really cool projects and companies in BC looking at, so instead of having your smart meter, you actually have your whole smart electrical panel, and lots of really innovative things happening there. And virtual sub-meters as probably an extension of the smart meters that we have now. So we're trying to work on the innovation side of things as well. So this slide does not do this project justice, and I just want to speak to a high level of it because it's something that's really interesting. So I mentioned getting the utilities together in a room, talking together, thinking about 2050, joint assumptions, what different scenarios would look like. That was the focus of our work that we're continuing on today. But we also did a kind of a digital twin type of project that was mentioned earlier too, but it was more at the regional, local level. So they modeled 5 different local governments, I'll say, to think about the infrastructure side of things in both the gas and electricity scenarios, and to think about the future and how different scenarios within those digital twins would impact infrastructure investments going forward. So it's interesting, we have to, I think the next step is marry these 2 processes together and think about more of a provincial-wide digital twin that can blend with these regional impacts too, because then we kind of miss the bulk transmission and the other types of things that need to be thought of. But it was really interesting for the more localized decision-making processes, and I'm sure in BC as other parts of the Canada too, and other provinces, we have some local governments that are really progressive when it comes to incentives for heat pump adoption and retrofits and things like that, and others maybe not so much for maybe sometimes very legitimate reasons. So we want to capture those differences and see how things are playing out, and what does that mean for infrastructure at the local level, then kind of build that out to what that means at a regional and provincial type of level when we talk about the backbone systems for both gas and electricity going forward. So it's all about getting the planning right. Again, we're seeing high demand, and we got to think about that going into the future. But there's lots of balances that we need to think about, and kind of the policy level that I mentioned that my group was focused on. We need to think about infrastructure. We need to think about rate impacts. I haven't heard a lot about rate impacts in the last couple of days for all these builds out, but they are actually something that folks really care about, especially the politicians when they get in certain cycles. But at the same time, if we're going to build out this system for the future, we need to have a realistic conversation of what that looks like, not to mention all the procurement opportunities that go on top of that as well. That we're really seeing economic and climate goals really being driven by the future of our energy system. I know Hydro-Quebec has done this, and we've seen a lot of your commercials about the economic development of the future, and I've modeled some of ours maybe off of those too, so shouldn't say that publicly, but we do. It was interesting, just using our clean electricity as our competitive advantage to drive economic growth in the province, and we see that with the 4 major projects we have on the list, more than anybody else we like to brag about so far. Not sure what it's going to mean yet, but it's great so far. We have critical mines and minerals and some natural gas, major projects, especially in our northwest. And our northwest is a constrained area, and the North Coast transmission line that I mentioned before is there to unlock that constraint and unlock that economic growth that is there with the critical mines and natural gas and port expansions through the Port of Prince Rupert and others. But we want to do that in a way that makes sense, yes, to create growth, create revenues, but to be conscious of our climate goals as well and our climate objectives. And you hear folks in BC and our leaders politically saying we have the lowest GHG emission and get natural gas in the world. We can have the most sustainable critical mineral mines in the world, and that's because of our clean electricity. So we got to get all these things right and think about all these different impacts as we go together, and that's the point of having these utilities think about this as a group and kind of layer on those other government objectives as we think about that, because they're all integrated. We got to remember too, the core of our energy system is to support safe, reliable, affordable energy to folks. We had a task force for BC Hydro about 18 months ago, and we had a new head of the public service that was co-chair of it, and she's still the head of the public service now. And I was new to my role, and she pinned me down and goes, "What does reliability mean to you?" And I'm like, "See that light switch? You turn it on, the lights come on." So like, we got to be balancing all these different things too. So I already mentioned powering our future that drives some of this work. We're going to continue collaborating with the utilities to strengthen that integrated utility planning. Start bringing in the Utilities Commission, who kicked this off originally, a bit more to make it a bit more formal in the regulatory process. But more importantly, within just pragmatically working together, given we're all trying to go and how these systems work together, that we can optimize and have the highest and best use of these energy resources as we go forward. And that was it. Happy to take questions as we go through the group.
Good, so it's question time. We have plenty of questions, surprisingly, on the totally uncontroversial, non-controversial subject of capacity expansion in Ontario. Dave, you have a lot of questions. So I'll fire a few questions for you, but then we'll give you some time, and then I'll move to the other speakers because there are questions for everyone. But maybe I'll just ask three because they're short ones, and then you can move on. There's quite a bit of gas in your model, or is the model projecting any CCS for that?
No, we gave that as an option, but it didn't ever pick it up due to the cost.
But then, so I'm following up on that question. You mentioned that you are using a carbon cost in the model.
Yeah, the $170. It's
okay, which is a nice thing that you're putting in, but it's
no. So that's based on. So there's the national output-based pricing system, and then Ontario has its own EPS emission for electricity, and we actually have a lower threshold above which electricity emissions are taxed, but we use the same price.
Okay, so
but it's like 310 what's it, gigatons or tons per megawatt hour or I forget the exact.
So it's only above the threshold.
Yeah, and so you're without a strict emissions target,
yes.
You're not producing the economic incentive to pursue that.
Did you consider lead time for nuclear and other type of capacity?
Yeah, we didn't allow new build nuclear until the 2040s, beyond what is currently kind of on the books.
Okay. Before going to Mark, a last question, and then we'll follow up on other speakers. Can you explain more on the wind coming online on your slide 8? Is it mainly for repowering or new development, given previous problems with wind developments?
It's a good question, right? And so the model is assuming new development, but as I had in a different slide showing the availability of recontracting or repowering, from like a planning perspective, we're open to either. Whatever kind of brings those resources back to market or back to market, we're indifferent. It's just a modeling simplification, broadly trying to say wind, and let's figure out how to get it through procurement.
It seems to be coming quickly. In the question is the question asked? Well, because it's coming quickly, could there be issues about community opposition?
Yes.
Okay. I'll give priority to those who haven't asked questions first. But so let's go here and then second here, and then we'll go back to the Slido questions.
All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you for your presentation. I'm Christopher. I have a question for you. So we see that the BC government has mandated LNG emission intensity for the BC West Coast projects, and for a lot of those projects, it's dependent on electrification. And when you read their project proposals, a lot of them have like natural gas generation on site, pending when that electrification is going to happen. Can you like comment on that and the expansion of the capacity?
Yeah, and I think at its core, it gets to my point about the North Coast transmission line, getting to the Northwest where a lot of these projects are for sure. There's a few nuances, I think, just to be aware of there. So LNG Canada Phase 1, which is now in operation, and Phase 2, which is awaiting a final investment decision, they're both permitted to use gas with the permitting process and previous decisions. Cedar LNG, which the neighboring Haisla Nation is working in partnership with us, will be fully electrified. Wood fiber in the Lower Mainland, fully electrified. The potential big one that's up in the Northwest is Silisms, again, First Nations led, which is really cool when you think about these things, these First Nation led projects. which is also a project of national interest on the new list as well. So there is a bit of a timing mismatch with that one. So the North Coast transmission line needs to be built to electrify that one because the region is constrained. They have a plan to bring in floating natural gas barges to power it in the short term until electricity is there. Any new developments in the province have to have net zero ready plans now. So they will be net zero ready, just electricity might be a year or two before getting there. So there's a bit of nuance with some of those. But North Coast transmission line is critical to all these developments in the northwest part of the province. The region is constrained. There's billions of dollars of critical minerals and mines up there as well. And if you want those electrified, this line needs to be built. And so we're looking for the federal government to partner on that as well.
Thank you.
Yes, Mark.
Thanks, Pierre-Olivier. Question, unsurprisingly, mostly for Dave, but also a little bit for Christopher, too, because you raised some questions as well. And really looking at this from a modeling perspective, one of the things that strikes me is how you deal with uncertainty. Because in Ontario, we're in a situation now where the province has formally abandoned the climate targets, which were in some ways the foundation for the IESO's current plan. There's probably implications, I think probably largest around likelihood of electrification of space heating and anything like the pace that was being anticipated before. As much as I don't like it, we're probably faced with the possibility of further deindustrialization as well. I don't know which way that will go, but that's now a very, very real risk in Ontario. So there's sort of two macro uncertainties there. And then a third one, which is sort of related, but came up in Christopher's presentation too. I mean, we just saw a 29% increase in the commodity electricity component of people's bills. And one has to wonder, to what extent are we modeling the feedback of increases in electricity prices? I mean, there's a lot of costs being embedded there. And there's arguments over what's realistic in terms of projections on nuclear costs and things like that. But I think the cost curve is moving upwards. So how do you take that into account in running the model? I mean, is there a feedback loop that thinks about what does higher electricity prices do to both industrial activity but likelihood of electrification, for example?
Sure. Yeah, I'll start with the forecast one. So similar to Benoit, our demand forecast is bottoms up. So it does look at all of the kind of end uses across sectors and takes input costs as like fuel costs and electricity costs as an input into that. And so we are not within one planning cycle iterating back and forth because it would be too cumbersome. But this year's demand forecast will be taking information from last year's cost outputs, right? So there is that kind of feedback. And I think to the uncertainty question, while we don't capture all of the range of possible futures in our modeling exercise, I would say the advantage we have of doing the annual cycle is that we are able to update frequently. And I've done some internal analysis looking back, as we've been, as an organization, even back to, some of the Ontario Hydro stuff, we've got a pretty long published history of forecasts and then actuals, right? We're reasonably good in the 3 to 5 year range. Beyond that, it expands, right? Most of our procurements are kind of aimed at the 5 to 7 year time frame. So we should have reasonable confidence that what we are going out to market to purchase is probably appropriate for the needs within the time frame that we have confidence about. And ideally, as we update our models and our assumptions every year, we are getting more clarity on the next kind of round. Where the larger uncertainties are is, these bigger long-term build decisions about, do we put all this money into a Bruce C and a Wesleyville for 2040s. And that's where I think doing some of that stochastic capacity expansion, where we're really going to have to simplify the models, but try to answer these bigger questions to get a bit more insight, or doing the high and the low demand forecasts, try to give us a bit more certainty about these longer term questions. Obviously, there's still going to be uncertainty, and you're going to have to make your bet, but we can at least try to give a bit more insight.
Thank you.
And I guess for the BC portion that you mentioned too, we're in an interesting spot in BC. Like, we're blessed with our heritage hydro rates. As we procure more, it's a pressure on rates because we're working on that heritage rate from all our dams that were built in the 60s, 70s, and those types of things. We had Site C just come online for capacity, 1,100 megawatts of new capacity, which is great. That's 8% add to our supply stack. We had 2 calls for power, one picked, one in process. Each of those will add 8% as well. And the levelized cost for the first call, which is public number, is about $74 a megawatt hour, which is great. It's a good price for adding things, but it's still more than our heritage rates, and it's a pressure on our rates. So as we add customers, and we have an economic development agenda that's using our rates that are second, third lowest in North America to attract investment and unlock things like the things I talked about in the Northwest, you have to have the supply to go with it and the transmission to go with it, and they're all rate pressures for sure. So it's something we're having an honest conversation about, but it can be done in a practical, transparent way, I think. But the pressures are there and they're real for sure.
Thank you.
Good. Before going to your question, we'll move to some question to Benoit. There are a few. How are you validating your stock, and have you been able to calibrate your models to historical electricity and gas data?
That's a good question. So for validation and calibration, for validation, we mainly use our data. Actually, we have plenty of electric energy usage data from our customers, and 80% of our customers are fully electric. So we basically capture all the energy usage through electricity. So it's a very big source of information that we can use so that we can validate the model. So for now, we don't calibrate because the problem with calibration, we don't want to modify the initial models that we build with non-plausible attributes of buildings. So we prefer to have good attributes for any buildings and give a correction factor at the end of the day, at the end of the simulation. So we prefer to keep a clean model that is plausible without trying to learn parameters that is not very interested. I don't know if it answer the questions more or less. Yeah.
I'll follow up on that one, because you mentioned that one of the goals of the model is to actually look at potential savings and energy efficiency improvement and flexibility. So I just want to you teased us actually by saying that was the goal, but you didn't mention any kind of results. So do you have already some ideas of, are there some actual energy efficiency gains to be made?
Yeah, well, two things first. So depending on where you begin, I mean, someone with a very good house, well insulated, the potential for gains is way lower than a very bad building. So of course that's the first thing. And the second point also, before getting to some numbers, the same dwelling occupied by different tenants can be drastically different. So depending if you love hot shower, if you have 5 EVs, and or if you are very a monk in your house, that can drastically change your consumption. So that said, in terms of energy efficiency, the common percentage that we agreed for energy efficiency gains is around 15% on average, but that can drastically differ from people to people. Another aspect, maybe it's peak demand. So we have great numbers because thanks to our ELO virtual power plant in terms of peak demand gains. So there was some comparison done between dynamic pricing with FlexD Hydro-Québec rating and the ELO program. What it shows, like, on average, people with FlexD, so dynamic pricing, try to decrease their can decrease their peak demand by 1 kilowatt on average per household. Compared to ELO, it's 3 times more, so 3 kilowatts per households at the moment of the study. So give the right tools to the customers and trying to make them adopt better energy behavior can help a lot the network with the peak demand. So that's the numbers I can give you.
Thank you very much. Yes.
Hi, thank you for your presentations. My name is Oliver. I'm a master's student here at Carleton University. My question is also for Mr. Delcroix. Monsieur Delcroix. So how did you determine the values you used to create your building stock data set, like air leakage values, your installation values? And also, does your model use any occupant behavior?
So yes to both questions. So trying to characterize all the building stock, actually we try to gather a lot of information from all the information that are very sparse, like the land registry, so everything related to the geometry, so the kind of area of buildings we can have it. We have some internal survey inside Hydro-Québec where we have some answer from our customers depending on the building type, the kind of equipment they have at home, stuff like that. In terms of for the building envelope, it's a little bit more complicated. A long time ago, we did a lot of audit in the residential sectors, and we have a clear idea at that moment, the kind of R values, U values, and the windows, everything related to the envelope. So our analysis are still, and the building stock is still based on that, even if probably evolved with some retrofit in the building sector. So we try to gather every information that we have, and if we don't have, we try to use the building codes at that period of the construction and try to assume what would be the attributes. For the occupancy, so yes, we develop some kind of stochastic modeling for every device. So we include these stochastic behavior in our models. So basically in the SimPark tool, what we do is like for every building that are generated, we generate also stochastic profile for EVs, for pool, for spa, for every equipment inside the house, if they are, of course. Okay. So does it answer? Yeah.
That's great.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll go to the Slido questions and then I'll come to you. But some questions for Elisaveta and Anirudh. And I didn't write these questions. I love these questions, but I didn't write them. I'm really reading them. Elisaveta, is there a plan to conduct this kind of study for every province? Who should own this process?
I would love to. And this could be an exciting project. I feel like then we do the integrated energy planning, there should be more deep dive in some years, looking into these issues, but also looking in how the energy planning of your neighbor could impact your system. Then who could be responsible for this? Some authority probably should supervise this. We will be happy to support this also by partnering with some companies like Elegrid International, and also by developing our own capabilities to do so. So I think it's some sort of collaborative process. Probably it will be great to do the first like a pilot study on some set of provinces and then expand, because if the plan is to interconnect the entire Canada, these considerations of the failures and extreme events and how they will impact generators and grids and how much failures and their duration will increase, they must be taken into account.
So while Dave is here, why don't we ask Dave, well, are you considering such studies for Ontario?
So in June or July, the government released their integrated energy plan with a whole laundry list of directives and requests of the IESO. One of them was a report back on expanding transmission connections with our neighbors, and it was a pretty short time frame. Like the report was due back October 31st. So we did have discussions with Hydro-Quebec. We did report back to the government. I can't say much more than that because the report is not public. But we would like to do more detailed analysis if possible. You need time, right, to do it right.
Good, thanks. Anirudh, maybe you'll comment on that, but you can. But the question for you is, why does it seem so easier to have coordinated planning in Europe than it is in Canada?
Okay. All right, great question. It's actually related to the comment I was going to make with what Elizabeth and Dave said. In case of Europe, it's the reason is a lot historical to be for a lot of it, and historically they realized that just trying to be adequate on your own is a lot of the times not economically feasible, and there have been like various gas crises just over the last couple of decades, and one very recently because of the war, and for them just strengthens the idea that if the system is more diverse, interconnected, the more degrees of freedom that the system can have to face any situations, and it will be more resilient. And for EU and also the European Commission, this is like an important target. Even like just a couple of days ago, European Commission, they released they made a press release, and now from the next year, the Commission is actually going to actively push to have the Union more interconnected, because they see that it's really needed, and for also the dangers that they foresee on the horizon.
Good, thank you very much. Please.
Thank you. Nice presentations. I have a question a little bit related to electricity, but it's just a subsidiary question regarding the critical mineral development. As Christopher Gilmore mentioned, BC has a natural advantage in advancing the critical mineral development due to clean electricity. If we recall the federal critical mineral strategy was launched in 2022, and about $4 billion was announced from then. And then in new budget 2025, they also come up with a sovereign fund, which is an additional incentive up to $2 billion over the next 4 or 5 years. So with this, the importance of the critical mineral in different purposes, clean technology, defense, and all that. So are these funds helping advancing the clean development, the critical mineral development in BC? And how do you see the future of this critical mineral in BC? You have any thoughts on that?
Sure. I'll clarify. I'm not the mining guy in BC, but I'll do my best to, because I deal with a lot of my colleagues, because we're trying to get electricity to these sites. So I think, yes, those funds that you've mentioned are useful for sure, and a lot of them are helping the developers move their project forward in terms of system impact studies and some of those things. Some of the new funds are more dedicated to helping them do like last mile connections or connections to the facility, to the grid, and there's some planning there that can happen. Some of those funds, I think, are helping kind of regional planning and other needs that they need. Like a lot of these mines are in the middle of nowhere. So, like, you need infrastructure, you need roads, you need skilled tradespeople. So a lot of these funds that you mentioned are helping the proponents on those types of things, which is great. But at the same time, you can fund last mile connections and helping them support the studies to connect. But if we don't have the North Coast transmission line, unlocking that constrained capacity to that region, there's no projects. So we need to work on both ends of those, help the proponents be ready to connect, but we got to get the electricity to them. So, and it's not a minor thing. The North Coast transmission line, when you look from phase 1, 2, and 3 up to where these mines are, 50 kilometers through mountainous territory, and we're twinning 1 and 2 is twinning an existing line, so that helps, but it's still some pretty rocky and areas to go through and those types of things. So it's a big national achievement if we get that line built to unlock all these projects, and there's funds happening on different ends to make that happen. So we just need help pulling it all together and driving to FIDs and getting things done.
We're 5 minutes over time. So I think, and Edouard says we're ending now, so he's the bad guy. I would have loved to take your 2 questions, but then there's a coffee break, and then you can ask your questions during the coffee break. Thank you, everyone, for attending.
Indeed, I'm the bad police. So 30-minute break. You have time to vote for poster again, and thank you.